Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Friday, August 10th, 2018. Welcome to our Friday night edition of Grand Solar Minimum News. Let's get right started with some space weather. Solar wind speeds are sitting at 372 kilometers per second with a density of 9.6. Take a look at our sun. Guess what? 0 sunspots. That's 128 days now for 2018. 7 days in a row now without a spot. Take a look at our KP indices. Very quiet as well at a 1, with our 24-hour max also at a 1. And here is the current situation on our star. Let's take a look at the SDO in motion, as we do see a coronal hole developing in the northern part of the sun's corona, heading to the equator region diagonally. That should be felt within the next several days if this does continue to hold together as a crack as what we see in the corona. That coronal hole that is passing us by now, turning away from Earth, we should feel the effects from that on Saturday, sometime evening or later. But other than that, all quiet on the sun. We did have a CME at what it looks to be here on the western limb of the sun. Let me see if I can get the handy dandy circle to work. I don't know if it's working or not. Nope. Okay. Well, if you look at the western limb of the sun here, you will see as that facula is turning away from Earth vision, there is a CME right at the very end there. Again, that's not anywhere near Earth, so nothing to be concerned about, but just thought I would point that out. Taking a look at our TSI reading for August 2nd, 2018. Again, these are on an 8-day delay. This was sitting at a 1360.651, so hanging out in that 0.6 value all week long and then some. And I was going through some news articles today, and this one's from August 2nd, but this is a meteorologist here in Texas. His name's Jeff Ray at CBS 11. And in the title I said, is MSM starting to get it? And this gives me a little bit of hope. But once again, I find someone talking about solar cycles. And they even go as far as to talk about ENSO as well. Again, this gentleman is talking about how our sunspot count has been low. And, you know, it's interesting. He says, I know it's at the beginning of August, but my thoughts stay a season ahead usually. And lately I've been thinking about the winter. There are 2 reasons I'm optimistic we might actually get some snow days here for the next school year. This is in northern Texas. And he starts with, first, this involves sun-solar spot cycles. The number of sunspots is down, part of a natural 11-year cycle that is currently in a downward trend. This last July sunspot number was 1.6, the least since the last downward cycle in August of 2009. The fewer the sunspots, the less energy output of the sun, and there is a good case to be made that fewer sunspots means colder winters. And then he goes in to talk about a more consistent driver of our seasonal weather is ENSO cycle. This is a naturally occurring cycle in the equatorial Pacific areas where of warm and cold water move back and forth over the Pacific Basin. This winter appears to be an El Nino winter. On average, El Nino winters bring more snow to North Texas than winters where conditions are neutral in the opposite pattern, La Nina. The intensity of the El Nino thus far and how deeply it affects us is difficult to forecast. What is really worth noting that there is a chance not just for an El Nino, but something called an El Nino Modaki. Modaki is a Japanese word, sort of meaning almost. The equator sea surface temperatures don't span from the central Pacific all the way to South America. Instead, cool water resides just offshore of Ecuador and Peru. You can see the difference between the 2 kinds of El Nino below. I applaud this guy. Not only is he a TV meteorologist, but I'm pretty confident this individual here, without saying it out loud, is definitely a climate change skeptic. And a well-written article about what causes cooler temperatures. Last time we had snow like this in this part of the country was in 2009. The last minimum we had, low sunspot numbers. This guy was correlating everything that we try to communicate to our crowd to as well. So, you know, the Washington Post correlates the last time that they saw these kind of numbers from the sun. They said they saw snow in Washington. They're probably right. This year, they're probably going to see some snow. Same thing here with this guy down here in Texas, North Texas. He's very optimistic. And it's interesting. I'll try to find this graph for you guys, and I'll post it in the community part of YouTube. But I saw a map today of the 2018-19 winter outlook. And if you live in upstate New York, Albany, all the way north and east, that part and north, the rest of the New England area, we are in the red for blizzards. The lake effect activity is going to be more than average this year as well in western New York, parts of northern Ohio, Michigan as well. And then we have a cooler than average winter blob over Ohio, most of Pennsylvania, and Kentucky, parts of Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, and parts of Missouri. Also, with the cooler than average, they're going to see a little bit more storms. A few, not a lot. But then it gets interesting. They call it a winter battle zone. And it covers most of southern Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, parts of like the northern half of Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, and Texas, northern Texas, and parts of southeast Oklahoma. I just found it interesting that the winter battleground zone was going to be in that region. That's what they're predicting. And the only thing I can say that what that means is probably they're going to see a lot of icing events down there. And of course that area is just not, you know, privy to that kind of action every year. So it is a huge challenge for those towns and those people down there when they see icing events and stuff. So just interesting that I've caught a couple of articles here the last several days where there are some signs of people who write for mainstream media, and if it's on your local television, it's mainstream media. But this meteorologist, I applaud him for writing this up, to explaining to people why there are concerns of a colder and snowier winter. And look, you know this guy's a climate skeptic because he knows the CO2 situation. He knows where we're sitting at with the CO2, and yet he's still saying we're going to be cold because he's correlating sunspots and the data that we had from the last minimum that we had. And he's also comparing and also understanding that solar cycle 24 was weak, and 25 is predicted to be 25% weaker than 24. Little article here on Noctilucent clouds. This was taken off of Watchers. Actually, the SPACEWEATHER.com is the original authors of this. Something unusual is happening in Earth's upper atmosphere, Dr. Tony Phillips of SPACEWEATHER.com writes. Normally in August, summertime Noctilucent clouds begin to fade as weather conditions in the mesosphere disfavor the formation of meteor-seeded ice crystals. This August, however, Noctilucent clouds are going strong. So far in 2018, Noctilucent clouds are being reported to SPACEWEATHER.com 4 times as often as during the same period in 2017. And there is just some gorgeous footage put together here. This is in 4K. I highly recommend, if you guys have 4K capability on your screens, absolutely gorgeous images here. And this is one of the first unknowns here. They figured they'd see these go away a little bit, but he does here also connect that during solar minimum, the sun's extreme UV output decreases, and this has 2 effects. The upper atmosphere cools, and the upper atmosphere keeps more of its water molecules, which are normally split apart by the UV rays. More water plus less warmth equals more icy noctilucent clouds. If this is indeed what's happening, more noctilucent clouds may be offing as solar minimum continues to deepen into August of 2018. So again, nothing to be alarmed about. These are quite common during solar minimum, and just absolutely gorgeous images right here. Hopefully you have a 4K so you can enjoy this as well. I'm sure it looks good in regular high def anyway. Leave the link in the description. And I wanted to cover a few areas of floods, some recent, some not. August 10th, another day of another monsoon storm in Metro Phoenix. For the second straight night, Tempe was hit hard by rain that flooded streets, pushed mud onto freeways, and left several inches of standing water. The National Weather Service said some pockets of the city endured up to nearly 4 inches of rain that began pummeling homes and roads around midnight. Other neighborhoods got around 1 to 3 inches of rain only. US 60 was closed in both directions at Rural Road for hours because of flooding that began on westbound McClintock. Wow, McClintock. That's a new one there. Sorry, had to look back at Mario on that one. I'm not sure if we're saying that one, but it's a McClintock Drive. Nice. Okay, car stalled in the downpour.
Good job, G.
Yeah, I know. It's a little ridiculous. Again, this was just a thunderstorm. And I'll get to why I mentioned that here just in a second. Monsoon storms engulf Phoenix area for the 3rd consecutive day. There's another reason why I'm mentioning that as well. Heavy rains in Baltimore County. This was August 8th. Again, heavy rain from a slow-moving storm flooded roads and causes neighborhoods in eastern Baltimore County early Tuesday. These residents here are more upset about the damage that we've seen here. The parking lots got flooded, basements got flooded, my rentals got flooded. Leo's barbecue shack was flooded out, and his 12 rental properties and basement bar were damaged. He says he has seen flooding before, but never from a thunderstorm. I've seen it 3 times before with Aggies and hurricanes. His son John Evans was busy ripping up carpets and rentals which have been recently remodeled. So there's that factor. And you can't let that sit. And he describes why. The units on the side, they have wooden floors. In a couple weeks, in a month, it might start warping the floors, and then we'll have to replace all the floors there. So they're trying to do preventive maintenance. Neighbors complain. She's 89 years old. She has every right to complain. I don't have air conditioning. I don't have a furnace. I don't have hot water heater. I don't have electric. I don't have gas. They had to come down and turn that off too. And that's real. When we had the ice jam floods in Buffalo in January, it was like something out of a movie. They had people in red jumpsuits from the gas company knocking on doors, police officers knocking on doors, making sure that the water had not gone up too high. And fortunately, not in our basement, we'd experienced that, but others had to have the gas and everything turned off. But again, I wanted to highlight that another comment in a different part of the country, this gentleman here is mentioning, I've seen floods before, but not from a thunderstorm. And something similar was said in Tempe, Arizona as well. This is kind of a, this is a head scratcher. And I'd hope to think that these two guys didn't do this on purpose. And I think right now there's just a lot of emotions going on. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what the case is. But 2 Germans have been arrested on suspicion of running an illegal campsite in southern France after it was hit by flash floods, leaving 1 man missing. I'm bringing this up because Mari had seen a lot of footage today on Twitter and Facebook about these floods, and you know, they were pretty intense. And this story kind of emerged this morning about this, and it kind of struck me a little bit. But these 2 people are basically chaperones for a youth summer camp, and these 2 individuals were placed in custody and facing charges now of causing injury and endangering lives, working illegally, and running a campsite without permission. In other words, they didn't file the proper permits, or they weren't authorized to be camping here. And I guess what really upsets them, the French authorities, about 1,600 people, mostly campers, were rescued by helicopter Thursday night as authorities ordered the evacuation of several sites in the Gard. So this is where it has to be either a communication issue or a possible negligence, because this makes sense to me. You know, the French people are upset. They had to rescue 1,600 people from the areas where they evacuated already. These were supposed to be evacuated areas. There is an older gentleman, a 67-year-old man, German supervisor, who was helping with the camp as well. He's missing now, so otherwise he might be sitting at a police station right now. So very unfortunate, and I hope that this was just a sheer mistake, that was not communication with that campsite, and if so, what a tragic incident. And thankfully, there's no casualties yet been reported. But if it's negligence and they just ignored the call, then absolutely these people should be brought charges to. This endangered people, and it's a miracle that nobody has passed away from this event that they've confirmed yet. So I'll leave the link in the description. And finally, 66 houses, 264 shops damaged in Turkish flood as officials visit Black Sea province. In the title, I put flooding globally. We're looking at it everywhere, every day. It's been a while since I kind of reported on floods in, you know, other areas of the planet besides whatever I see on Watchers. So I did a little digging today, and I found a few places that I haven't heard about. Flash floods caused by heavy rains that hit Turkey's northern Ordu province damaged 66 houses and 264 shops, the country's vice president said on August 9th. Vice President Fuat Ote, the K is silent, and Interior Minister, Mr. Soylu, on August 8th visited the Black Sea province of Ordu, where torrential rains have caused massive flooding. Ote traveled through the cities and the districts to inspect the damage of flooding caused in towns. He also visited hospitals, met with people who were injured. And the good thing about this, a lot of rain fell, 20 kilograms per square meters. Some areas got 95 kilograms per square meter. No casualties, once again, thank God. But the one thing that I read here that stuck out the most to me is that not just infrastructure, but crop losses also happen here, and the government is very insistent about repaying material loss to everyone that lost to these floods. But this is the third flood in 20 days, and we are coping with it by our own means. So, you know, thoughts and prayers go out to these folks for being resilient and strong, and trying to hold it together. And, you know, that strong leadership over there, the words and what they're doing over there, and how they communicate with the rest of the world about how they're dealing with it. So again, thoughts and prayers are with those folks over there, and hopefully the flooding stops, or at least dies down a little bit. 3 floods in 20 days, that's quite a bit to deal with. All right, so I applauded mainstream media a little bit ago, and now I gotta rip them a little bit. And this is from PBS NewsHour. Will geoengineering to cool the planet harm crops? Now I sat and read this article, and this is some good stuff, guys. PBS. I really wish they would just stick to Sesame Street, but some of this information I was reading is just let me go through some of this real quick. It says, as Earth's temperature steadily climbs, there's the first lie, and international action to curtail heat-trapping greenhouse gases falters, climate change poses such a dire threat that scientists are now seriously investigating geoengineering as last-ditch attempt to cool the planet. So right there in that first paragraph, I'm hearing a couple things. A, they're saying that our country is failing at greenhouse gases, or, you know, cutting down on them. And that's actually false. I did see, I didn't want to brag about it. I was probably the only channel that didn't. But according to a study that was done recently, Trump's administration, since he's been in office, has reduced carbon emissions by 62%. So there was the first lie. And I can see it now in the narrative when it says, now seriously investigating geoengineering as last-ditch attempt to cool the planet. Here you go. Now they're going to start coming up with excuses on why the planet's going to be cooled. They want to install this geoengineering theory into your brains right off the bat. But deliberately manipulating Earth's climate could obviously have unintended consequences, so it's very important that we study it before anyone tries to use it. Again, for all you chemtrails crazies out there, it's very important that we study it before anyone tries to use it, implying that nobody is geoengineering right now on the level that some of these folks out here think. Haiseng and a team of researchers aim to find out with a new study that looks how one type of proposed geoengineering injecting tons of tiny particles into the atmosphere to deflect sunlight and shade the planet would affect a very important system, the agricultural crops. And they use the examples of volcanic eruptions that led to crop failure, and also less sunlight. And this article is just, to me, it's kind of nuts how they've come across this information. But they're saying, and they're admitting to it, the Earth cooled about 0.5 degrees Celsius for almost 2 years when Mount Pinatubo, its sulfate aerosols, cooled the entire Earth. So in one breath, they're trying to act like that this is a form of solar geoengineering. And they're already acknowledging that volcanic eruptions such as the one they mentioned here do have something to do with cooling the planet as we enter in this minimum period and we see uptick in seismic and volcanic activity. It says here they found changes in sunlight due to Pinatubo had reduced corn or crop yields, whereas El Chincan caused less such harm, although the eruption was not well measured as Pinatubo, a factor that could skew the findings. Pinatubo's dimming effect cut global corn yields by an average of 9% and soy, rice, and wheat by 5%. The results were a surprise because scientists had expected the resulting light diffusion to be more beneficial for crops. I mean, the only thing that's harmful about light for crops is UV. It just feels like that whoever wrote this was trying to get a little too cute, but kind of contradicts himself in my opinion. We're not saying that geoengineering harms agriculture on the net. We're saying that it doesn't help agriculture. Before us, many people said that this could be a way to save the agriculture. You could geoengineer the climate to prevent it from getting hotter so you don't have crop failure. We point out that when you do that, you shift the crop losses from being caused by heat to being caused by less light. So here's what PBS is doing, and they're too scared to say it as well. So when they say being caused by less light, well, what you're saying is when we have less light from the sun, we also have cooler temperatures. So in a sense, it's not just the less light that's causing crop failures. It's also the cooling temperatures and a lot of other factors. So in a way, these guys are kind of boneheads for even saying that geoengineering would help us in any way. They believe that this planet continues to get hotter and that they think that cooling the planet would be beneficial to crops. And I just find that hard to believe they actually believe that. So just an interesting article. Like I said, when I first read it the first time, it kind of came off as these are oxymorons, talking about global warming. But I think there is a subliminal message to this as well, and they're too scared to come out and say it straight up. So I'll leave the link in the description. You guys check it out, see what you think. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong. I don't think so. But I do see a lot of underlying things that could. They are trying to connect volcanic eruptions to cooling, and I don't think they were trying to use it as an example as solar geoengineering. But they're right about one thing: the cooling, the effect that it will have when a lot more of these things start going off. So I know it's not like jumping out of a birthday cake naked, say here it is, global cooling, but I think we're starting to see some strides being made here. I mean, this meteorologist here in Texas wrote a very good article correlating this solar minimum and INSO, and also he might be correct about this El Nino Modaki, and Modaki is Japanese for almost, meaning almost El Nino, which right now we continue to see it teeter up and down. Yesterday it was at plus 0.31. Now today it's at a plus 0.28, so it lost 0.3 on the value. So it's fluctuating back and forth. So a Modaki El Nino would absolutely make sense to me. There is the North Atlantic anomaly. Once again, we see it heading up towards the negative 0.56 value. Last time it got to this area, it kind of peaked out. We'll see if it continues to rise, or is it going to start dropping again like it has in the past. Looking at NOAA, not a lot going on weather-wise. Some flood advisories in New Jersey, New York City. Lots of heavy rain in that area, but still heat warnings in the Northeast. You will see some relief here very, very soon. And like I've talked about other days, not a whole lot of action going on, folks. South Central Ohio looks like you're getting some storms. Alabama and Georgia. Parts of Texas receiving showers. New Mexico and Arizona. And I'll tell you, I was looking at the GFS here for the outlook down the road, and monsoon season is definitely in full effect for Arizona, New Mexico, parts of Texas. Not so much as they probably like to see it in Colorado, but they could use the break because it's going to be dry in the parts of Colorado where we've seen the massive hail and the thunderstorms that have rolled through there. So not as active, but towards the end of the month, you start to see a little bit more action in that region again. And as far as rain chances go, we are stuck in this pattern where everywhere from the Four Corners region through the Midwest, the Midwest all the way to the Northeast and the Southeast, this constant chain of moisture, just wave after wave, hitting the same areas week in and week out. So we'll continue to monitor the situation. There is a couple of storms, actually, for you hurricane enthusiasts out there. We actually are looking at development in the Atlantic. I wish I had more information. I should have brought it up before I started tonight. But there is a 20% chance of development at last check. So spaghettymodels.com does a really good job when it comes to tracking storms. And this looks like one that might actually be something worth keeping an eye on. It's heading towards the Gulf. It's in the Caribbean right now. It's still quite a ways away, but it has developed, from last I checked, pretty intense over the past few hours. So something to keep an eye on as far as that goes. I wish I could find the radar. I do apologize, folks. But other than that, I'd like to take a minute here and check with Mari, see how everything went tonight in the chat. Appreciate everybody participating.
Hey Jake, how you doing?
Wonderful.
Everyone in the chat's doing good. You know, we got some very entertaining conversation going on. I don't want to really, instigate on YouTube, so I'll have to fill you in afterwards. But I would like to give a shout out to Rob, He gave us a super chat to celebrate him getting laid off a job he hated. So thank you, Rob. Woo-hoo. We just love you. And G White, we're excited.
Good to know. Good to know. I hadn't gotten back to your message yet, Rob. I seen the flow charts that you'd sent me and the anomaly maps. And again, I really appreciate everybody that's involved with this channel. A lot of this information wouldn't get relayed if it wasn't for the folks who work behind the scenes and help us out, especially Starman and Rob and Henrik. You guys have always been beneficial to the research of what we do here. Penelope, she does our Facebook modding. She does a wonderful job. And she's constantly posting information on her personal page as well. So these people are dedicated to this, not because they're enthusiasts for the end of the world, but it's something that we need to be prepared for and be aware of now. That way, when it happens, we won't look like a deer in the headlight. We'll know what to do. We will recall the information that we've gone over, and hopefully it'll kick in and we'll know what to do. But that's going to do it for us tonight, guys. We appreciate you tuning in. Please remember to like and share, and please subscribe. Hit that notification button. We've noticed that a lot of people are complaining about not getting notifications. So after the video, go ahead and check out the channel. Make sure that you have clicked on the bell for notifications. Okay, we will talk tomorrow, guys. We will have Henrik on, and it should be a little bit earlier than usual. I'm going to try to shoot for around 4 p.m. Eastern time. That's Saturday, August 11th. All right, guys, we'll talk soon.